first. And I have got the wonderful duty today of introducing some of our SIGs today. One of the things I want to point out, it's very important to me, all the work that the SIGs do. First is a group of volunteers who come together to make things better, to make the world a little more secure. We all have second jobs, we all have day jobs, and so any activities that we do are outside of that. And a lot of our SIGs put in a lot of work to come up with new collateral, new trainings, new processes, policies, frameworks, a lot of wonderful work. And for me, I think it's the most important part of being a member of FIRST. And we've been going through over the last couple of Thursdays the different SIGs and what they've been up to and what kind of volunteers they're looking for, what kind of work they're planning for the next year. Normally we'd be doing this face-to-face, but here we are live and on YouTube. So giving this format a try. With that, I'd like to introduce the information sharing SIG, and Alexander is going to tell us a little bit about what they've been up to and where things are going. Alexander, please continue.
Great. Thanks for the introduction. That's great. And again, good morning, good afternoon, or even good evening for depending where you are and so on. So I think it's one of the recent statutes of the information sharing SIG, and it's something that we are doing for the past year. And I will just go back a bit about history of the information sharing SIG and what we achieved and what we did in the past year at FIRST. And again, it's really something that we did as member and for the members. It's really something that we are sharing. And like Sean was mentioning, it's really something that we do on next to our job of on the activities and so on. But we really want that it is successful, especially the information sharing is an activity of group and community where people are really sharing information in not only in their own benefit, but for the benefit of others. So just a side note, and when everything started, so it was in Berlin in 2015 when we had these discussions about different information sharing practices, tools around it, and so on. And we discovered that there were some, I would say, some gap to fill there, especially as first to increase at least the automated information exchange, especially automated information sharing in the cybersecurity space. And we had this kind of crazy idea in Berlin to say, okay, we should start a small information exchange platforms accessible to FIRST members and see if it works, and to validate the concept, to validate everything we are sharing and so on. And to be honest, when we started to discuss about that, it was like not everyone was really convinced about it and if it would be successful and so on. So now it's now more than 5 years, and we can say, okay, is it successful? And I can tell you it is. And just for looking at what we did for the past year, so we had this starting, and that's the thing that we did. So we started with an open source information sharing platforms, and as Circle is, for example, actively active in MISP, we decided to go for MISP at the early beginning. So it was like some years ago, and we didn't know if users from the FIRST community will use it and so on. No, if you look at the statistics of the platform, so we are actively maintaining it, keeping it up to date and so on with the test version and so on. Now we have the dashboard, we can see really the evolutions. And what we can see, we have a steady growth of the number of organizations that are connecting to the MISP instance at FIRST. We have, I think, above or close to 600 organizations that are connecting and using MISP on a day-to-day basis. To be honest, I don't recall exactly how many members we have at FIRST, but I think we are close to that number or even higher, I think. So a significant percentage of organizations at FIRST are using the instance. What you can see, you have two lines there. You have one orange line, which is a local organization, so the one that are bound to FIRST. And then you have the remote organizations. Those one are the one that we learn from information sharing from third parties and so on. And we see that it's not only local organizations connecting using the system and so on, but we receive even information from third parties through the platforms. And it's a significant number increase too. It means that we have other organizations that are interconnecting with the instance, sharing the information, and even accepting to share information beyond their own community. That's really the goal at the end, is that the information is flowing to different communities. So if you have an ISAC somewhere in the US, an ISAC, I don't know, in Middle East, the information is flowing through first, for example, and then this information is reaching out all different members. And I think we are reaching that goal because we see the ratio of remote organization is increasing at the same rate than the local organizations. So we see that we have more and more organizations actively sharing and distributing information, which is, I think, a quick gain. Later on, I will show you some example of information shared, so like that you can see for the one that are not familiar with the platform, and you can really see how much information is shared and so on. So when we started the initiative, we decided to run the MIS platform, which is completely open source, so you can install it, download it in your premises for your own organization and so on, and you can interconnect to the first MIS instance. If you don't know to use it and so on, there's a really significant number of training materials, documentation, and so on. We even did some workshop at first.org for that. So I think if you can crawl on YouTube on finding the first organization, you can find the video there. So we are running an instance. So to access this instance is super easy, and thanks to the first team doing the IT support and so on, they are great because they set up a wonderful single sign-on system where you can access MISP2. So if you log into the portal for single sign-on, you end up into the MISP instance, and you can just like go directly there and connect and get an access. As I said, it's really a small project that we started in 2015. Nowadays, it's quite successful. We can go into statistics, but just to look quickly at what has been done, we have seen that a lot of organizations are sharing, and they're not all sharing the same kind of information. And that's really one of the things with information sharing. It's usually cover different faces, different way of sharing. So the data models and so on used by people are always different. And that's what we try to discuss during the SIG. It's all information should be, encapsulated, contextualized, and normalized. And what we have seen, and that's, I think, an interesting outcome that we discover, is there's different shape of information. And that's something that we really need to support and understand. And that's great because the format of information shared depends of, for example, the capabilities of the team. If the team, for example, is doing, only forensic analysis, you will share a lot of information about those evidences from forensic. Nevertheless, if you have a team that is doing network forensic, you see that a lot of indicators are network related. But you see other organizations that are, for example, sharing things like their notification of phishing. Some are sharing information about, for example, specific targeted attacks, EPT, and stuff like that. So you see it's very broad, and we try to really encompass all those kind of different way of sharing information. So if you go on the MIS platform, you see you have a very nice statistic page, and you see even per organization the kind of information they are sharing. So I really advise you to have a look there. It's giving a lot of details of all the information is shared. Maybe some of the things that, and that's, I think, quite interesting too. We have these MIS platforms operated for first and by first member. It's really a nice lab. I mean, it's a laboratory of exciting things that are shared and so on, and we can really see what is evolving over time. And I think there's an increase of information shared, but especially all the information is structured and so on. And one of the things that we have seen is a really significant number and increase on the contextualization. And that makes sense because the thing is, at the initial state of information sharing, we have seen people sharing a lot of unstructured information of very basic information like just indicators, so bare indicators, without contextual details, without information about threat actors, without information about the techniques that the attackers use and so on. But thanks to Maitre, which introduced this attack model for the past year, we have seen a trend there where a lot of people were starting to use contextualization. And this contextualization really helps a lot for various things. I will take some examples here, but one that is really interesting is you can really see what kind of organization, what they are seeing. So I took just an example here. It's on the MISP instance, I selected an organization and I just select all. So the circle, which is we are a CERT in Luxembourg, and what you can see there is you see the kind of attack techniques that we attach to our event, and it's giving an insight about what kind of information, which kind of techniques each organization has seen. But the other can see that, for example, if they are targeted by the same kind of techniques, if those techniques are different, which could happen sometimes. Or, for example, you can even discover gaps in your team, for example. I've seen that, for example, we were looking into one of our attacks, and we had kind of white box somewhere where we were wondering, okay, why do we have a white box there? And this white box came only because we were not, for example, covering these data sources. So we didn't have a sources of information to cover that kind of techniques. So it was like, for us, a very good insight to see that, okay, we have a gap here, and we just saw it by the other sharing information where they were able to detect that techniques. So you see that it's really, when you even share back information, it's useful because you can really find out if you are missing, for example, some capabilities even within your team. So over the past 2 years, we have seen an increase of the use of the attack model. So what I want to share with you is some example of events in the Miss. I took TLP white events because the recording will be public. So I took some of them, and you see, for example, one of a very classical one. This one is coming from one of our public services, which is Looky-Loo, which is services to test web pages. And automatically, when we find out, for example, specific phishing web pages, we push it into MISP. And for this case, it's interesting because you basically have screenshots. This one is one of those wonderful Microsoft phishing. You have all the detail about the phishing and so on. So this kind of information is useful for various reasons. Obviously, the reason of I would say defense. You get the data, you protect your infrastructure by, for example, blocking those URL on your proxy, on your edge devices, security devices, and so on. Makes sense. But on the other hand, it helps you to find out, okay, which kind of phishing which are going on. Have you seen that? How effective they are? You can get this information for statistical purposes too, and find out, for example, what are the common vendors or services that are being targeted for a specific period of time. So you see that in MISP, you can share that kind of information. You see that the sharing gives you a lot of details on the sharing of information. In addition to that, for example, we can see more and more default OSINT feeds that are shared through the first MISP. For example, this one is coming from ThreatFox, so it's initiative from ABUCH. And this one is a well-known community provider of information. So this one is a non-profit one. They are sharing information about specific things. They are sharing it in MISP format. So now we see more and more information for filtering and so on. So if you connect to the first MISP instance, you start to see more and more information like that. You see that you have what we call taxonomies. What is the source of the information? So you see this one is coming from what we call block of filter list. You have significant libraries of taxonomies that you can use in your creation of MISP event to attach this information and to define later on what the information can be used for. And that's, I think, quite important. If you produce information and part of the information sharing that we have seen, so when we were discussing at the SIG, one of the most common questions is like, okay, I have information I want to share, but the thing, what kind of contextualization I need to attach? Because at the end, the one that will use information are other parties, so they need to understand what they can do with it. And with such kind of taxonomy, you can add this kind of things. For example, adding basically a source of information is very interesting because people can qualify the source, can filter out of the source. So sometimes they trust one source or they distrust or untrust specific sources. So they can use those kind of taxonomy there. Another example, so like that you can see a kind of overall example. This one is coming from the Belgium cert. It's one of the specific attacks regarding coronavirus and the pandemic. What you can see there is it's really the contextualization there. You see that automatically you have target information with targeted, which kind of malware. This one is coming from another kind of knowledge base that we have in MISP with the specific malware. For example, in this case, we have Loki with the Malpedia information. So you see automatically, when you add contextualization, it makes much more sense. It's not only the raw information that you can use to filter out this, but it's giving you a lot of insight about the techniques used, the attackers, and so on. And afterwards, you have additional information, just like the indicators and things like that. So it's just 3 examples, like out of the instance to show you what can be shared and used and great. So I mean, contextualization was really a thing, and what you have seen is this is really I think important for the first community. If you're able to contextualize information and so on, it's giving you a lot of insight about what to do with information, and you can even use information to derive statistics. And like the one I was mentioning for attack is there, but I mean, attack did a lot of, I would say, child, which are similar matrix-based model for classifications. For example, there's one for the financial sector, things like that. You can, if you go on the MISP of the first instance, for example, you can see we have like, I don't know, 6 or 7 matrix-like attack, not only for the same field, but for different field of activities. So now the question is like, what are we doing now for the SIG and for FIRST and so on? Obviously, one of the core activities to operate this kind of is more than a playground. No, it's like critical infrastructure for information sharing. But for us, it's really, we want to support much more than just the basic contextualization and so on. And it's 3 open questions that we have now, and this one I think a regular question that we ask, and it's really important because we learn a lot from the members. First of all is the taxonomies. You have seen that we have some taxonomies in MISP. Those ones are coming from standard knowledge base that we can describe. And for us, it's important to know from the first community which kind of specific communities, taxonomies that we are missing. And I remember we received a lot of feedback from the past year from the different members, from new taxonomies. And for example, a lot of the taxonomies came from, for example, I remember we had a very good one from DHS, US CERT, regarding the classification of incidents. I remember some from some ISAC in US, for example, that they're giving some information about the classifications. We get a lot of from German contributors too about the specific group of qualification of data they were giving. So for us, it's really an important sources of information. So if you're first member, don't hesitate to contribute there. If you see a taxonomy, for example, described in a book and that need to be structured to be used, let us know, and that's part of our activities within the SIG, is to find volunteers to translate those kind of taxonomies into information that you can parse and use into MISP. Another thing that we are doing is especially the data modeling of the information that you share. So over the time, what we have seen in the MISP platform, for example, was that a lot of people wanted to share some very specific information, but they were not able to modelize it, or at least to structure it. So what we did, we have now a flexible model for objects. So I can even show those because it's interesting. So it's a list of default, what we call templates, and those templates can be used in MISP. As you can see, we have a significant number of existing templates. So it's going from cybersecurity, more intelligence things, up to things like disinformation and so on. And then you can express a complete set of things. And we have those object templates. I can just take maybe an example so like that you can see what it is. Okay, I can take, for example, the passive DNS one because this one is interesting. This one came from another SIG at first, which is a passive DNS SIG, and this one is coming from a contribution from that SIG. And this one is basically describing the template, how to describe information into kind of an envelope, which will be then shared and so on. So that's something that we ask members, if there is a kind of gap or lack of specific object, is to tell us and show us what kind of information that we are willing to share, and then we describe it. It's a very quick process. It takes usually 1 or 2 hours of a quick discussion chat in the channel, and we see, oh, I would like to express this object. Then we are able to design it together, make it in the repository, and then it's available in MISP and many other platforms that are using the same format, which is a very simple JSON format in the MISP standard format. So it's again something that we are doing within the information sharing SIG. In addition to that, we try to support all the members to use the platforms, to express models, to see how to share information and so on. And we have a pretty large repository of training materials. There are around 700 slides. There are plenty of documents about information sharing. There are some video there, like the one that we did at first. And those are supporting materials. But sometimes we are missing some materials because we need to focus on specific aspects, things like that. So then we need to look into it. I will give you the links afterwards, so you can look into those existing materials and see what are fitting. So, for example, we are really eager to get contribution from members regarding translation, especially for information sharing. Sometimes there are some cultural aspects, and it's important that those are included in the training materials too. A localized version translations of documents are important too for some communities. So we get, for example, the community Dutch translation of some materials. We get some Spanish translations from, for example, from the South American CCIRT network there. So it's really important that the community is really asking what they need, and if they cannot contribute, it's fine too. They can even mention what they really need, and we can find another member in the community that could even help there. Just to conclude on the outgoing activities on the of the SIG, we face, I would say, for the past years, no kind of significant problem that we want to solve. So I would say 10 years ago for a CCIRT, it was quite easy. There were like one or two tools for operating their CCIRT. But no, in 2021, I mean, everyone has different tool sets. Open source, proprietary tools, specific infrastructure, and so on is becoming more and more complex. What we have seen is for MISP, we have seen a lot of people using it as an information sharing systems. They interconnect with other parties and so on. But even within the organizations, they start to install different MISP instances to do information sharing, because information sharing is something very common between members of FIRST, but it's becoming more and more common even within an organization, especially when organizations are pretty large. It's not uncommon to see, for example, people having like 5 or 10 MISP instances to share information between different members. So, for example, we have seen a car manufacturer having a MISP instance for the SOC team, one for the trade intelligence team, and, for example, one for the audit or financial teams, which are different models, different kind of information, but they interconnect those instances. So to solve these problems, we are now trying to extend a bit our tool set. And for the one that are using the MISP from FIRST and want to integrate with others, we have a new open source project called Cerebrate. And really the idea there is to help the team to manage their fleet of MISP instances, the interconnection with third-party MISP instances, especially FIRST members and some others. One of the things that we have seen is when we start to share information, you build what we call sharing groups. So sharing communities where you don't share to the whole, but to a specific subgroup. And so we wanted to create a tool for doing that. So Cerebrate is doing that, so you can manage individual organizations, sharing groups, and you can, when you connect between two instances, you can now even cherry pick some specific sharing groups and so on. So really the idea behind this project, and it's coming from different requests, is to use interconnections. And in addition to that, to support the orchestration of additional local tools through the same platform. So it's an early project. It's already in production for one specific network called the CCIRT network in Europe. But we plan to extend it to others, and that's why we discuss within the SIG how to use it and so on. Just a quick screenshot so you can see how it works. So when you have plenty of connection to different MISP instances, when you have a kind of mesh network with different organizations and so on, you can use the platform. So it's again an open source platform. We are currently evaluating the possibilities to even have this instance running at first too. So it's not going work that we do within the SIG. And if we see an interest for having interconnections of MISP instances through Cerebrate at first, we might set up a first Cerebrate instance too for synchronization. So just to close the session and then to open to question and answer after. In the slides, those one will be public and so on, so don't worry, you can take notes of afterwards. It's some links about the, so you have a link to the information sharing group, so you can join if you want to participate to the SIG. We have a very extensive GitHub repository with the MIST training materials. So it's including not only the materials as PDF, but including the source. So you can even modify the materials. Everything is open source. So it's in LaTeX, you can update it and so on. As I was mentioning, taxonomies, objects, and galaxies, additional contextualized information that you can manage. So it's what we call kind of knowledge base to structure information. So if you want to contribute, or if you see any missing element and so on, just reach out to us either through the SIG or even through GitHub, and we can try to support you there. So that's basically it for the quick introduction of the SIG, what we are doing, what we have done in the past year, and what was the successful aspect and what we are current problem that we are trying to solve. So now we can, I think, open the floor to everyone. If you have any questions, feel free.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This is really neat. If anyone has a question, please feel free to put it in the Q&A. We've got few enough folks here. We might be able to undo your mic and have a little bit more of a dialogue. So please, if you have something to add or question, let's go ahead and raise your hand, and we can open up the mic for you. No pressure on our support staff there. One of the questions I had, Alexander, this is great, and there are lots of groups that share different kinds of information and whatnot. What would you say to somebody who's like, well, we already get our information over here, or what's the value add of using this MISP versus another?
Okay, it's a good question, because indeed, and that's, I think there's kind of inflations of all data sources. So people are acquiring sources from vendors. Some might be acquiring source from OSINT. And why I would acquire again information through first. So there are many reasons for that. First, you get really I would say a good insight of what's going on in the CCF community. And that was really the role of first. It's like, okay, if a vendor is giving me a feed, maybe this feed is like hyper focused on a specific topic, but they don't see the broad topic. So that's why I would say the first, why would you connect to the first.org NIST, for example, to get this information? It's really opening your eyes to the large community and see, okay, maybe I have again some blind spot or thing I'm not monitoring that might be of interest. Recently, we have seen, for example, some attacks on mobile phones with two new kind of malware that are actively popping up, and we were not like looking too much at it, but when we see some members at the first community starting to share it, it looks like, okay, it might become a trend now. And indeed, so the trend of new things and so on. So I mean, one of the most interesting aspects, if you connect to the first instance, is really to get really a broad view without to have a kind of limitation, because you limit your search to an hyper-focus things. I don't mean that the other are uninteresting, but I mean that it's really an additional source to give a better insight of what's going on.
There we go. Excellent. Another question I would have also is, first of all, is the SIG open to anyone, or do folks need to be a member of FIRST to participate?
It's open to anyone. So for us, it's the same. Nevertheless, to access the MISP instance from FIRST, you have to be a member.
Okay.
That's the only thing. But it's not, we are not limiting the access to the SIG group. Everyone is able to join. So we can have external contribution. The only limitation is the access to the MISP platform. Nevertheless, we provide access to other MISP platforms if needed. So if people need example and so on, there's plenty of MISP community out there that we can give access to, and people get additional information too. So that's fine.
Excellent. And then is there an expectation as if you were taking information that you're also supplying information back into the system?
I love this question. The thing is, with information sharing communities, we think that the best is people are using the information, but we don't force people to share. And this point, I think, is very interesting, because we have seen some communities having such kind of requirements where they were forcing people to share. And usually it's not really going in the right direction. And I remember a use case in Asia. I will not name it, but they were running into that problem because they were like forcing everyone to share information in order to access information. So what happens? It's a lot of organizations were like getting OSINT reports and so on, whatever information they could find on the internet, and pushing into the systems to get access to the other information. And that was lowering down the quality of the information. So it was like kind of an example of like when you force people to act and so on is not really going in the right direction. No, I can even tell you good statistics about at which stage people start to share information. It takes a lot of time. So for some communities, what we have seen, I would say median access, or I mean the median where people start to contribute is around 1 or 2 years. So they get access to the platform, they start to use it, and they start to share. But sharing can have different models. You can have, for example, just sightings. This one is always great. So you don't even share information itself, but you just say, I've seen that, and that's giving an information to the other. Okay, this one is maybe important. So, I mean, for the first instance, if you're already connecting and using the information, for us, it's already a quick win, because it's already like limiting the impact of incidents. I'll take another example. You're an ISP, but you say you have a rule internally that you cannot share information with external parties. That's fine. That's great. Because at first, what you can do, you can even take the information and use it to find out if you have, for example, infected machine in your infrastructure and so on, and then you can already act. And then it's already a quick win for a sharing community. So we see in the academic world that sometimes they try to modelize those sharing communities, and they make kind of game theory of both like people leeching and people contributing and so on. And for our experience, and it was a very good discussion that we had in the SIG, we have seen that the leechers are very important because they use information that you are providing. That means by that, reducing the global security impact. So for us, it's important. So to go back to your initial questions about do we impose restriction about, okay, do you need to share? No, because we think it's already a good advantage to just get the information and use it.
At least if somebody's using it, they're protecting folks, and maybe eventually they'll share as well.
Exactly, you get the point. So that's critical.
That makes sense. One clarification I wanted to get on my previous question, I apologize. If someone is not a member first, but they are a member of the SIG, are they able to get access to the MISP instance?
Yeah, so the one from First Talks, they need to be members.
Okay.
But there are many other communities that we are in contact with, and they can get access. So that means they can even join, and then they can ask if they are in specific. For example, we have, for example, I don't know, a German companies joining the SIG, but they are not first member. And then we know, for example, a lot of German organizations that are having ISAC in Germany, and they are eligible to get access. So then we can provide the contact they can get access to.
Okay.
I think we have questions on.
Yep, we've got. I was going to start asking you this. Do you foresee sectorial instances of MISPs at first, or is it rather the roles of the sectorial ISACs?
Yeah, so there are different kind of, and that's again the definition of ISAC and what are sharing communities. But we have seen a growing numbers of instances that are for sectors of activities, or for ISAC, or for associations. I'll take an example. You might know GSMA, which is the Mobile Operators Association, and they operate a MISP called T-ISAC, which is an ISAC for the mobile operators. And for example, some of the communities there, some first members are members of GSMA, and they share information on both communities. And if they have, for example, information that are really bound to telecom operator and quite sensitive, they keep it for themselves. But at some point, if it's more interesting, I can take example like Proximus. I see Proximus there that are sharing information through first, which is meaning that, okay, it's not only the members at GSMA, but they think, okay, maybe this information is interesting for both community, and they are sharing on both. And the information is structured in the same way. It costs nothing more for them to share information. So that's indeed the case. And there are a lot of sector of activities popping up with sector. But again, for information sharing, you have this problem when you start to have like a lot of information. So it's basically in a group and so on. But what we really, I would say, promote during the SIG and the discussion is to have those kind of bridge. So if they use two MISP, they can interconnect those MISP. And if they set a specific context there, for example, for everyone, for first member, they can share back the information to the full community. So that's indeed popping up, but I think the drawback is like those silos of information, but as long as you interconnect those, you get information flowing.
Yeah, because you definitely have a lot of groups that will, work together on a specific incident or a specific group of problems, and then trying to get them to spread out can be a bit of a challenge.
Exactly.
Awesome.
And going back to the comment from Krasi, I think he made a very good point on there. And our advice to go to the CTI SIG tool, which is more on the trade intelligence aspect and so on. And for example, they have this maturity model. And again, the maturity models about sharing of information is like in line with what we have seen on the sharing communities, where they start at a specific phase where they consume information, then the quality is not there to produce and share, and then at some point they reach a level and their capabilities to share back the information. But that's great. So I mean, what we can see is the different SIG of first, we see an evolution, so gradual improvement, and that's, for me, it's a good sign. I'm more and more positive on that.
Awesome. We have another question here asking, what's the license for data found through MISPs? Can companies use it commercially in their own products, or can it be distributed elsewhere for nonprofit purposes?
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. The information that is shared through the first instance is bound to the TLP classification. So that means as long as you respect the TLP classification, it's fine. There is an additional classification called EAT, which has been done in a SIG of first, where you can even add additional rules, like, for example, limiting to research only, commercial use, and so on. But by default, it's only the TLP classification applying. So that means if you have a TLP white information, you can do whatever you like with it, as long as you respect TLP white. Same with TLP amber. So that means if you have a commercial product and you have to use information to your internal or commercial trade intelligence platform, for example, you can use it, and that is benefit to your customers too. So that's fine. The only restriction is if some information is tagged with the IAP tag with specific restriction, it's classification. As far as I know, around 90% of information there is only use TLP classification, meaning that you can reuse information as long as you respect the TLP classification, either for commercials, non-profit, whatever thing that you like.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I'm glad you kind of touched on, you and Krasi in the chat, a little bit about what the differences between the two SIGs are. So I think some folks kind of coming in and just looking at the website are kind of going, why do they have two, threat sharing groups? What do they do? Yeah. What's difference?
Yeah, that's and I think Krasi did a very good summary. But the thing is, the thing for us is important. Initially, when we started, and I think both were started at the same time, so I think a bit later for the CI one, but really we wanted to have an operational platforms to do information sharing within first, and that's really the information sharing aspect that we are discussing and so on. Then you have on the CTI one, you have all the educational aspects on how you do CTI, all the processes along to it, the standards and so on, and that's more the CTI group. So it's two really complementary groups, and I mean, I think we have a lot of exchange between each other, and that's, I think, quite important, because with this model, we have a real and concrete exchange of information, and then we have another group that can talk about all the CTI aspects and all the different ones. So I mean, initially the information sharing group has started as a laboratory of like information sharing within first, and now it's a production environment where we can use what has been done there to validate what we do and to expand what we do in the CTI world and even others. I mean, for the passive DNS one, we had this exchange about object model that we want to exchange and so on. So you see, it's like, I think it makes a lot of sense there.
I would imagine both groups kind of keep tabs on what the other one's doing to some extent. So there is, and probably some overlap of membership, I would assume as well.
Yeah, most probably, I would say yes, for sure.
Excellent, excellent. One last question from me is, what kind of groups do you want to have come join your SIG? What kind of volunteers are you looking for?
So what we're looking really for, I mean, it's people that are, um, I mean, facing the harsh reality of sharing. So things like, okay, I need to share either internally. So for example, group between team, because sometimes it
Hmm.
may be difficult, either for legal reason, either for technical reason and so on, or even some for cultural reason. And discuss about all the, I would say, how to use the tools to improve what we are doing. So we don't want for example, bind the bind the people to the tools, but really we want to bind the tools to make it better, and to do this bending of the tools to make it, I would say, affordable and usable by everyone. So what we are looking for is really people that want to share information and either are doing it on a day-to-day basis and they are experts in the field, up to the one that are, okay, I'm starting an ISAC, for example, and I want to share information and I don't know how to do it.
Hmm.
So then they can join us and we can discuss about what we already did, what we face as problem during the setting up of first community and other communities, and we can share such kind of information. So there's really people involved into information sharing and how to structure the information and so on.
What will you say has been one of the biggest challenges with the SIG? Is it getting people to share? Is it getting people to trust each other? Is it just some of the technology you've been trying to roll out? What's been kind of the big challenges?
I mean, trust is quite okay. I mean, the first big change that we had was the legal restrictions.
Hmm.
We have seen a lot of discussion there, and sometimes we're just kind of, I would say, kind of nightmare, but it's not completely real. Because we did a lot of work on the GDPR, for example, in Europe. We did even a document about it and so on, and we discovered that basically the GDPR was helping to share more information than the situation before, because it was like normalizing the situation in Europe and even abroad for some of the aspects. And we have some interesting documents. So I would say one of the most challenges back to fight the preconception about information sharing and so on, and especially the legal aspect.
Hmm.
The rest, I mean, the trust wise, I mean, which is the interesting part of first. There's a very high level of trust between the members already, and that's, I think, the thing that is really helping. So that means for us, the legal aspect was the most challenging one.
Yeah, I would think I've certainly worked in organizations where, the lawyers had to look at everything and what are you sharing and why, and, why would we do this? And trying to just explain, the security industry and our community as such to them sometimes was a little bit challenging.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Awesome. Do we have any other questions from the folks out in watching? Okay. I think, I think that is all the questions we have for today.
Perfect.
Alexander, any last comments before we move on?
No, just one. I mean, we have the SIG. We are there to help, and as you mentioned very well at the beginning of the sessions, it's really something for the people, and we gain when people are joining and discussing about their problems. So if you want to discuss with us, join us for the information sharing aspect on how you currently use the MISP instances that are provided by First and so on, and you want to provide feedback, support, and so on, don't hesitate. So joining us is, I think, the best thing that you can do. Thank you.
And when are your meetings?
So we do ad hoc meetings. So when we have a certain number of topics to be discussed, we don't do regular ones because we know that sometimes it can be challenging for people. So what we do when we have a certain number of topics to discuss, we set up a meeting, and
Okay.
we do virtual meetings.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Alexander, thank you so much for your time today. This has been very fascinating. And I certainly know I'm going to go back to my team and make sure that they're aware of what you all are doing and if they have time to participate as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellent. And we are going to take just a moment to kind of do a little transition here. We're running a little ahead of schedule, but if you'll give us just a moment or two, we will be right back. Okay,
So
we will.
can you give me?
Absolutely.
Yes, go ahead.
Yep.
Yeah,
Nope. You're
thank you. So I
fine.
can set up and make sure everything's working fine.
Indeed. So we are just transitioning between talks right now. So if you're watching live, just bear with us a moment or two. We ran a little ahead of schedule, but had a great talk on with Alexander about his SIG. And now we're going to see the, I love the coin, I love the phrase, the other side of the coin with information sharing here at first. And Krazi will be with us in a moment. He's just getting set up. Again, the SIGs are what, in my mind, are kind of the lifeblood of what FIRST does. These are a group of volunteers coming together to solve problems, to share information, to create collateral, education, frameworks, policies, um, anything that they can to help secure the ecosystem. And it's all sorts of different folks. It's vendors, it's governments, it's, you know, private industry, it's nonprofits, it's education. And there's a lot of great work that's going on. So if you're watching this and you see something, you go, wow, that sounds kind of interesting, please go out to first.org. We have a list of all the SIGs on the left-hand side of the page, and a way to see kind of what they're working on and click through and ask to join. Many of the SIGs do not require that you're a member of FIRST. You can be a non-member and come and participate. As Alexander was mentioning, there are sometimes distinctions on the information you're able to get, but we'll, oops, there we go. But that's all workable. And I think looks like we're about ready. Krazi, are you ready to rock and roll?
Yes, we are.
Excellent.
Thank
well,
you.
let me, with no further ado, let Krazi talk about the cyber threat intelligence SIG. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for the time for to attend this presentation. We're very excited about what we do in the SIG, and we want to share this with you and hopefully spread the word out and be able to bring in more members. Now, when I say we, I really want to credit Hendrik Adrian and James Chappell, who are co-chairs of this presentation, and they will be participating very actively in this presentation as well. So without further ado, let's cover or let's look at what the cyber threat intelligence SIG is about. So the most important thing I would like to kind of cover here is our goal. We are different from the information sharing SIG because we're focusing on the indication side, as I mentioned earlier, versus active indicator sharing. So this is an interesting distinction there, because the way we are trying to scale in the community is by floating all boats, raising the tide for all boats, and then having all boats, benefit from that higher tide. So if we can help spread education and certain standards, this is going to be a great success, because then everybody will be better prepared to deal with adversaries. And as I mentioned, and Alexandre also mentioned earlier, not everybody can be at the place where they can produce intelligence, but every company has a role to play in that game. And 90% of the roles are about not producing intelligence, but actually consuming it and applying it. So again, going back to the tide, and all boats float there. Now I'll hand off to James here, who's going to give us a little more about the history, and then Rick will cover some of the products we're working on. Actually, Sean, I'm not seeing, is James on?
I'm checking. I do not see James on here yet.
Okay. Okay, then I'll cover this, and then I'll text him as well.
Okay.
So basically, we started at a SIG, at a PC meeting in Munich back in 2016. So James had the idea of doing a CTI SIG. I independently had that idea. I was kind of thinking about it. James has kind of approached the board, and then we connected there, and we were like, hey, let's do this together. So it took a little bit of coordination, and the SIG officially launched in 2018 during the annual conference in Malaysia. And that's how we started, actually. We have had very good membership, but we'll talk about this more. Now, Rick, would you like to tell us more about what we do and what the products we produce?
Yes, thank you so much, Karasi, for the chance to explain here. Hello, can anyone see?
Yeah, we can hear you and we can see you, Rick. Thank you.
Okay, good, great. So we are in the products matter. Well, what we can explain about the products is our activities. Activities is resulting is having the communication between each other in matter of the discussions, and is resulting to create products that can be described in the three kind of forms here. One is the forms of the events of the cyber threat intelligence that can be built as online events, like we have done recently in this April or last year as a webinar and online cyber threat intelligence events. And then the other one is on-site conferences that we have done it before in the 2018 and 2019, but it was canceled, then becoming the first online event of the cyber threat intelligence in the first platform. It's supposed to be done in the Zurich. And this type of product is to refresh the recent information in CTI by inviting the top notch of the expert to talk together and to present the CTI matters in methods for the purpose of the educational and strategically and operational information regarding to the recent threat or the recent method that can be done by overall CTI community. The other form of the product is a CTI training or workshop, which is pointing to the educational IR teams around the globe that is needed our help to train them to learn about the CTI aspects. From the, for example, the OSINT matter, the OPSEC matter, the tabletop exercises to build and brush their CTI teams to be more and more capable to handle the threat and to be work together with their IR group to mitigate the any kind of the threat that aiming there. And then we are also providing the starter kit or tools for the teams who want to start their CTI teams or activities. One more product forms is the briefing papers in regards of the know-how and knowledge about the methodology of the CTI that can bring academical discipline to the CTI as a knowledge. I think that will be all for the products from me, Krasi.
Thank you, Rick. And actually, and the last thing I wanted to cover, like in the overall, is currently we have about 180 members. Unlike many of the SIGs, we are fairly conscious about who is participating, and we just don't want to accumulate a lot of people that have no interest once time signed up, and then they moved on. So we do a periodic cleaning of the list, but and again, we have no problem with people being leechers. That's absolutely not a problem. Just like with the information sharing, the more people we have and the information can be distributed, the better. We just want to have a clear understanding of how many people we're actually reaching versus how many mailboxes have an email filtered and nobody is actually reading it. So we want to be very realistic about what impact we have on the community, and we also conduct surveys from time to time about what are going to be the next topics we want to cover in the SIG. So we're seeking this feedback. We're trying to have a feedback loop there. Now, having said that, as I said earlier, promotion of education is extremely important. And the lack of standards, I believe, has been quite a problem for the industry, just because a lot of the marketing teams, in their zeal to promote products of security vendors, are getting in the area where they basically start abusing certain words just because they sound scary, they sound very interesting, they can grab the attention, and this is causing a lot of confusion in the community. So we're trying to have to standardize terminology, which is also aligned with what the government, what has been in government space, which let's face it, they have been doing this for hundreds of years, not in cyber, but even in cyber they have been far ahead of everybody else. And the other thing is also we're creating this common body of knowledge where we want to have uniform level of education of of junior intelligence analysts that come into the industry, so that when an employer hires somebody, they know exactly what they need to complete, what are the different training that or different information that they would have already acquired. And this is extremely important to have uniform workforce, or at least in the beginning. Not everybody is going to develop in the same way, but having at least a uniform minimum bar for entrance into this space, I think is going to be beneficial for everyone. So the next thing is also, apart from the common body of knowledge, we also help with some lists of open source tools that can be of use to people that are getting into this space. Rick actually had spearheaded a magnificent event called the Mega List, which Rick reminded me, but somebody else actually donated the list initially, but then Rick spent a lot of time curating it and having it structured. And we'll talk about this in a few more minutes, but we're creating a lot of resources for new teams that are coming on board that would like to build this capability. Rick, who actually kind of helped? I just want to give credit. I'm actually really kind of want to make sure that we give credit to everyone that has contributed.
Well, it's a teamwork, sir. A pleasure to help.
Okay, so the next thing is we also work on organizing events. James was instrumental in organizing some of the previous events, like the previous years. Like he was actually even co-sponsoring one of the events in London a couple of years ago, actually 3 years ago now. He was also instrumental in the webinar series last year. So he has been doing really great job on those events. Both him and I have been part of the program committee and all those events. Organizing events that bring the community together and also bring education again is something that we take very dearly. We take very seriously, and we're kind of focusing on that now. I just want to brag a little bit about the latest event we organized. This was at the CTI SIG Summit, which we organized about a month and a half ago. This event was literally on a shoestring budget. We did it in under a month, or about a month of organization. And we had well over 600-700 people that attended. Now, we had less people registered, but we had more people attending, which goes to tell me that the YouTube link was shared between people, which again is good. We don't have a problem with that. The event was free. The only reason we wanted to register people is just to actually track how many people were impacting with our work, not that we care to market to them in email and so on. Anyway, I'm kind of getting on a tangent here, so I apologize. Then the next thing, Rick, you want to talk more about the project activities and our stance on political issues and stuff.
Okay, we stay apolitical, neutral, and non-operational and educative. That is our base operation here. First is like the United Nations of the IR teams. We avoid the sharing of information that can invoke misunderstanding due to some of the threats are involving the speech sponsors from the probably having involved with any kind of the members in the first. So we are basically doing non-operational discussions, and then the focus to the educative matters that can be used for anyone who wants to start their CTI operations. So that is actually one of our main ways to do the CTI SIG in the first. Do you have any additional about that, Cressy?
No, that's Ulrich. Thank you very much. Well, let's jump on to membership. So I kind of spoke a little bit about how we do the pruning, and like we just really want to make sure that people can benefit from this. And this is one of the reasons we were the first SIG to implement an application or entry questionnaire. And in this questionnaire, we ask people to give us their expectations of what they expect to get from the SIG and how they think they can contribute to the SIG. Now, this application process is not really a formal application where we're like, oh, you're good enough, you can participate. No, it's more about for us to make sure that that we meet this person's expectations, and if they don't, if they have very different expectations from what the SIG is doing, what we normally do is we point them to the SIG charter, and then we ask them the same question again. And in most cases, people are like, oh, now I understand this, and they come in with the correct understanding and expectations in the SIG. In some cases, people are like, no, I was looking for information sharing, for example. And this is when we refer them to the information sharing SIG, so that they can go and exchange indicators. Now, I see that James has joined. I wanted to say hi, James.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, so we started a little bit ahead of time, and unfortunately, James, yes, anyway. So this is where we're on the membership. Now, James, would you actually like to jump in and kind of say a couple of words about, the membership growing and so on?
Yep. So we try and work with our membership to help them express what level of engagement they'd like to be involved in. So we say it's either reviewer, contributor, or curator role. That way people be honest about their intentions in terms of the amount of time that they're able to spend. And then we make asks that are appropriate of their availability. I think it's sort of growing steadily. I think we're sort of having a bit of a conversation at the moment about how we maintain our membership. I think there's probably is a healthy thing to do to maintain that. So yeah, looking forward to sort of working with the group and working out what more we can do to sort of align with people's availabilities and also wants and needs from the SIG overall.
Yeah, and James, I already mentioned about the questionnaire that we the periodic polling, and now the questionnaire that is about to come out next week with more details about what people would like to see next year. We even had several cases where there were different approaches to a particular problem, like for example, different cycles of intelligence, and we did internal voting within the group just to see where the membership stands on their preference of what they think which approach we're taking. Yes. Oh, and again, just want to mention this. We have a curator, contributor, and reviewer. And the reviewer really is basically the most basic place where people can just sit and read stuff whenever they have the ability to do so. No pressure for them to actively participate. Okay. And yeah, it changed.
So,
okay, cool. So talking about the curriculum. Yeah, sorry, go ahead, James.
Yeah, so the curriculum so our goal was probably the largest bit of work that we do as a SIG is to maintain the common body of knowledge for the SIG. We do that through a thing called the curriculum. We have quite a formal reviewing process for this. The reason it's so formal is we want to ensure that we have a sort of a state in the content, so that when we update it, it's published for a particular version at a particular time. We try not to go over too much old ground as well when we're putting this together. We're trying to make sure that we're adding new content and broadening what's available to first members. So we've done 2 major versions of that already. Every time we release a major version, that goes onto the first.org website. And then we've got other sort of maintenance releases, if you like, which happen throughout the year through the SIG meetings that happen every 2 weeks.
Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit more on the process, I think this may be useful for other SIGs as well. What we do is we start with a shared Google Doc, and usually this comes as a person suggests a particular topic or an expansion to a topic, and then we talk within the SIG if this topic has merit, if prima facie it has merit. If it does, usually it is the same person that suggested it that builds a skeleton, or maybe in some cases even develops some content. And then everybody looks at the document and starts contributing, commenting, and the exchange there is very interactive. However, this is not on the wiki, so there is not going to be incomplete or misleading information on the wiki at any point. So we grow this document in the Google Doc, and then once we have level of completeness, we call in for one review, which usually is 1 to 2 cycles of the SIG meetings, which is a couple of weeks to 4 weeks. And when this document has converged to a place where there is a minimum amount of changes, we do another round of very serious proofing from point of view of grammar and language, and then we post it on the wiki where it is basically in final draft stage. This is when people can review it again, and it stays there in such a final draft stage until we're ready to cut the next release. So as you can see, as we work on different projects, different sub-parts of the curriculum, they will stay for a long time in this final draft project on the wiki. We'll also, see how they refer to other parts of the wiki. And then when we're ready to have a coherent, larger body of text, we cut a new version and it comes out. Our goal currently is once a year with a maintenance release every 6 months. And for the most part, we have been able to maintain this. Rick, would you like to add something?
No, I think the curriculum is, you guys already explained it very well. Let's go to the next part, sir.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rick. And now the next one is, yes. So speaking more about the events, yeah, I already spoke about the different ones that we have covered in the past, and the summit was the most recent one. But I also would like to give James more opportunity to talk about the previous ones where he was very, very actively involved. And James, I kind of gave folks a few words about it and how much work you did on those, but I didn't want to steal the show from you on those three.
Not
or
at all.
On the previous ones.
Yeah, so I think we've had a good set of events over the years. I think this year's been really interesting with the, and I know Rick and Krasi put an enormous amount of work in the sort of mini conference that we did this year, which I think provides a lot of really great content we can offer to first members going forward. In terms of, obviously in the 2019, we worked with the First Events Committee directly, sort of putting that together in London. The Zurich one didn't quite happen in the end, but due to COVID, but we're very much looking forward to continuing the conversation on that. And yeah, we spent a fair amount of time on the short webinar series early 2020, which again is available via the to first members via the first portal. So if you go and look at the webinars section there, all of the content is still available there as well.
Yeah, and subscribe, and people that actually registered even if they were not members.
Yeah.
What do you think about the arranging the seminars during the on-site event, James? I think it is a very, very difficult things to do that in the real place and inviting many people together. That is a very awesome work. Could you please kindly share about how things that happen when you arrange it in London?
So I thought that, I mean, I was really, really excited by the 2019 London event. It was great to get everybody together in one location. And of course, it's one thing we all miss is being able to get everybody together. It was very productive and gave a lot of focus to, I think you really had the attention of the audience there. And there was a lot of engagement, a lot of conversations that happened around the actual event themselves. I'm sure first have this with lots of other topics as well. Obviously, but there are also advantages to these webinars, right? So we can get a broader range of speakers across a broader range of topic, shorter notice for a lower cost, and cover a lot more ground in a shorter space of time. So I think it, you know, as I'm sure everybody else is currently discussing, you know, and as we'll find at the annual conference this year, having a hybrid approach probably will end up being the norm for these things going forward. I'm intrigued to see, you know, how First manage this generally going forward and what we can learn from that.
Yes, thank you. And one other part that I didn't mention earlier of our work is the work with standards bodies. And Rick had done quite a lot of work in that space. So I'll have him cover this section. Okay,
we will start with the standard bodies work It is basically short projects that we are having in the CTI 6 that we are having like a one project per one term of year. And then it was started by James' idea to let's put together the megalist resource, which is contains about some hundreds of the very good attributions, and we have to update it to the recent. And I said, okay, let's do that. And then when I did it, when I do it, it was not originally from me, and then at the time it was many people are joining in together. And when I see the load, oh my God, I thought I can finish it like 2 or 3 days, but actually it is going to be a yearly kind of a project. So it is actually started from the mega list of resource. Mega list of resource is a resource where there are tools, there are feeds, there are kind of the informations that will keep you doing the CTI operations. And then those lists are very, very huge. And then we start to fix the list within a year, and then we are keep on maintaining it in the yearly matters. That is the list is so huge, so that is why we call it as a mega list resource. It is well, anything regarding to the CTI, feeds, tools, anything is all there. So that is one. And the other one is, I think past years, we were starting about the ICS or OT basis of the threat. We saw that there was no actually a framework for putting the IOC related to the ICS to the any kind of the attribution sharing platform. So we had another crazy idea again to put, why don't we just make a framework to put the ICS or OT attribution into a taxonomy, and then we can put everything into the MISP. So we are gathering together again, and then let's talk with Alex in the MISP, and then we talk also with Margot in the ICS SIG, and then we just do the framework, and we put all the details of the IOC of the ICS and OT over there, and then it happens. So we are also maintaining this project. It is a very good project. There are so many threads are coming aiming for the ICS right now, and the tools is in there. It is in the MISP platform. In the taxonomy parts, you can see about the ICS OT over there, and it is can be used as a plugin with a JSON. And the next project is about the okay, another crazy idea. What if we help the MITRE ATT&CK to improve their metrics with new sub techniques that haven't been there? Oh my God, this is a very, very hard kind of the task, but let's try to do that, okay? So we have some many ideas. People are gathering together in the meeting, and then we came up with one idea. Let's put the new sub-techniques in there. And then first we have to create the framework of the submission, so anyone in the first can use it. Then the framework was built. We are in the contact with the MITRE organizations, and then we are submitting also one preliminary sub-techniques to there. We call it time bomb. It will be explained later. I think this is an explanation for me.
Yeah.
Sorry, taking too much time.
Yes. Well, you know what, Rick, and actually James, I remember that there was a member that donated the initial Excel spreadsheet, and I just want to acknowledge that member because I just can't remember the name, and also if we can acknowledge the team that worked on the mega list.
Yeah, I think we had about 3 spreadsheet submissions, and we sort of collectively consolidated that into 3. So really appreciate sort of submissions from members there. And just to be clear, this is something that's still growing today, so you can still submit to that list as well. So yeah, thanks to everybody for all that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, Arsalan was one of the folks that was actively maintaining the list.
That's
at some
right.
point. Rick as well. There was a third person, and I apologize. It's been a little bit of a rough week. Thanks a lot. Let's jump on to the next slide, which is our achievements. And again, a really big achievement, the 2 versions, and now the 3rd version soon will hopefully be released right before the conference, or maybe a little bit after it. Then the CTI SIG Summit, a really big success, I would say. I was pleasantly surprised by what we achieved, and also like just the fact that a lot of people were sharing the link, and we saw many more attendees than registered. That was great surprise. Then we had the webinar series before that, and then we the different projects that Rick just covered a second ago. So having said that, I would like to open it for questions.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate you jumping in when we were running a little ahead of schedule, and this is some great information. I wanted to get back to your goal on education. I think is so incredibly important. I see a lot of folks coming out of universities and whatnot, and they've had maybe one security class or two at most. How are you getting the word out about this amazing body of knowledge? Have you all like worked a little bit with the academic SIG, or what can we do to kind of get more of the word out on this? Because this sounds wonderful.
So this is actually a very good question, Sean. And just a little bit of my background. Currently, I'm working on my doctoral degree. Well, actually, it's a dual degree, doctorate and master's in Homeland Security. But I have built a class that I will be offering for hopefully in the fall based on that framework. So, with first we're trying to build the framework that says what needs to be included, what things people need to know. And then we're also trying to add some content, but for the most part, we're using hyperlinks to content outside. We don't want to reinvent the hot water, basically, or the wheel. What I have created as content for this class is basically unique content I created that will be presented to students. And once I do this test run, I am going to package the class in a way that it can be reused in other places for academic purposes. Now, from point of view of industry and industry education, we already have this as the curriculum. The curriculum is the content for educating industry. So we kind of have both of those covered, I believe, so far.
I think I think we're quite excited about the potential as well, Sean. I know, Chris, you were presenting to some of the certs in Africa earlier this year, looking at the topic of threat intelligence. Sure, yeah. So there are sort of some sort of presentation and sort of webinar style deliverables that we're starting to push out. And again, I think there's probably an opportunity to promote those. I like your suggestion about working across SIGs. That is definitely something we should think about doing. And I think as we have some more sort of single deliverables outside of the already published curriculum on the FIRST website, I think, we probably should think about how we promote those a bit more. But it's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I am sitting here and I have to admit, I feel a little embarrassed that it's like I didn't realize all the education that you all had put together, and I'm thinking, wow, when the intern starts in the fall, that's the first place I'm going to send him or her. I think that's terrific.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Krasi.
I just wanted to add also the other place where we presented it again in the webinar series was the CTI Summit as well. We also had a little bit of a panel there trying to collect more feedback. So going back to the feedback, we're very feedback driven, or at least feedback. Let's say we are open to a lot of feedback and we integrate it. Mm-hmm. I think this is what's very different. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of say it out loud and just solicit more feedback on what we have created so far.
That's great. With that, what kind of members do you look for? I mean, you have I love how you have the distinction in membership and what people can participate, but are there certain regional areas you want to get more membership from, or certain, sectors you're looking to get a little more feedback from, or any kind of things like that?
So there are two. So we don't discriminate based on sector or origin. We want people to join from everywhere whenever this is possible for them or wherever they have interest. The two main criteria for somebody to fit well in the group is either to be willing to participate and contribute content, or more importantly, to be interested in consuming the content. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot of benefit of people that are just hanging around and doing nothing without reading the content, because it's just another person on the mailing list. What we want is people to actively use the content and tell us, you know what, you did this wrong, you got to fix it, and this is how you can fix it. Because only this way we can make this content better. Otherwise, it's not going to be the best. And I want it to be the best. We want it to be the best.
No, that makes complete sense. Oh, please, Rick, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. You know what? Another question. Another thing we have actually planned, starting with version 3, and Nick already is working on the Japanese translation. But when version 3 is out, we're looking at translating the content to Spanish as well. But Japanese, Gino is easy because he already is part of the group and he has volunteered to do that. But we'll look at what resources we can use from first to help with translation in the other languages. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's chat when y'all are ready. Rick, please go ahead.
I think it will be great if James can explain the differences between the membership status of the. We have a contributor, we have curator, and we are also having reviewer, which is already explained by the press. What is actually the differences between the curator and contributor in our group?
So a contributor would be sort of an author of content, so somebody who's actually creating content. A curator might coordinate the submission of that content. So they'd be responsible for perhaps coordinating a few other contributors to create an output. A reviewer is somebody who gets involved in the
mega list.
Yeah, or the mega list, indeed, exactly. And a reviewer takes on that role. So if you think of it from a quality assurance perspective, you know, not just sort of spelling and grammar, but also sort of reviewing from a content expertise perspective, providing feedback in a timely manner. So yeah, I think we're keen to sort of make sure we ask people to do things which align with their commitments with regards to time.
Nope, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Thank you.
All right. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time today. This was incredibly fascinating. And I know the link is going to be out there for folks who are interested in potentially joining the SIG. And again, they can go out to first.org and on the left nav, see your SIG and sign up or sign up to be vetted, if you will.
Come and join. Oh, one thing, just to make sure we're clear as well. I think a lot of people can get confused and think that the SIG is a place where you share information. Just to reiterate, we're working on best practices and methodologies. We're not a place to share threat intel. That's really what FIRST does a fantastic job of through projects like MISP and through the CERT framework. So just so everybody's really clear.
No, that's good clarification.
Yeah,
Thanks,
we discovered
James.
that in the beginning with the information sharing SIG and so on. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, gentlemen, thank you again for your time
today.
Thank you
for the opportunity.
Excellent.
Thank
Great.
you.
And for everyone,
Bye.
if you'll give us just a moment, we are going to transition to our next talk, which is going to be the Red Team SIG. So we'll give Luke a moment to get on board and get the slide deck ready. So we'll be back shortly. Thank you. All righty. Hey, Luke.
Hey,
Are you about ready?
I am.
Excellent. So Luke's going to talk to us today about all the work that the Red Team has been up to and what they do. And and explain a little bit more about the premise and how they're doing. So Luke, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out which button this one is.
Okay. Don't disconnect yourself. I can't do your
I can see this is going to happen soon.
No worries, no worries. Just a reminder, I believe today is the last day and you're the last SIG update we've got going. We've been doing this every Thursday for the last few weeks, and it's always great to see the work the SIGs have been up to, what they've gotten accomplished over the year. And, you know, surprisingly with the situation we've been in with the pandemic and whatnot, you know, SIGs are still going, you know, some a little more active than others, of course. You know, we've all had a lot more on our plates than we had in previous years. So it's been great to see everyone showing up and kind of seeing how things are going. So with that, Luke, I will give you the floor.
Thank you, Sean. And hopefully this is the right button, right?
You are good to go, sir.
All right. Okay, good. Well, thank you and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here. I should be with Jordi, our co-chair, but he can't make it. He had obligations this afternoon, so I'll be presenting along the update on our Red Team SIG. And two things, I think it's very hard to follow the CTI SIGs because these guys are overachievers and they make everybody else look like turtles in terms of productivity. And I think the pandemic has hit us a little bit harder perhaps than other SIGs. Red Team SIG likes to meet in person because we share experience about red teaming activity that we don't want to do over electronic channels so well. So this has been the practice before COVID hit, and still is affecting us a little bit, our ability to meet. But anyways, I'll go through the presentation. Basically, I wanted to start to make sure everybody knew what the red teaming is. And we have a definition here. It isn't one that we've adopted as the SIG. There's many different definitions people use. So this is just informative and not to start a debate on precision here. But essentially, it's an activity where a group of cyber attackers will challenge the security of a company and try to break in, usually without notice, and behaving in a way that corresponds to the expected behavior of the main adversary that the organization is afraid of, if you want, or the greatest risk they pose. And basically do things as well once they break into the organization if they succeed. This can be via, of course, cyber means, but also could include physical means. And then try to go and find information and do some agreed effects, all under control, and demonstrate what they can actually do without getting caught. And if they get caught, let that happen a little bit to see how the incident handling is being done within the organization, whether the reaction to get them out is fast enough, is correct, and the right thing to do. And basically, once that's done, come out and say, it was us, here's what you did good, here's what you did wrong, and here's what we should do as an organization to improve. So this is what we think of when we think about red teaming. So it is not in the context of exercises. It is real life on production network. And also it's not penetration testing where everybody kind of has a defined scope and knows what they are targeting, and it's system oriented. This is really people process, full scope sort of assessment of whether the security is efficient or not, and how you handle an incident. And from this also gather all sorts of interesting findings that are really useful for senior level sort of briefings and demonstrations of what can happen. Typically, the outcome of these is really eye-opening for some of the people who are not working cyber all the time. And they really help convince the organization that, okay, we have some issues and here's a little bit more funding to deal with it. Process, really, basically, everything is done under control, everything's approved, everything is legal as well. And here we show one of the paths, but it's the typical one everybody knows. You might send a spear phishing email. It would lead to some malware getting installed. You'd establish command and control communications with servers, and then you would, lateral move inside the network and persist. You'd start to find interesting stuff, and then you'd start to do whatever was agreed you would do as demonstration of effects. Of course, we always think about data exfiltration, but it could be something on operational systems as well with some impact. Obviously, this is production, so there's things you can't touch because that would present too much risk. Sometimes you would set the objective to go close to that and achieve something where we would know that if you can do that, you can do a whole lot more, but not do the whole lot more because it's a production system. And it can easily also use simulation, so you might not even do the spear phishing attack. You might just put in the malware on the machine right away. Say, assume we got infected. Now what can we do? And then move from there. All sorts of different things can be done in that process that leads to having some objective achieved from an attacker's perspective, and then reviewing all this to do the analysis of how did that happen, how come I didn't get stopped or caught, and then have this reflection on how to improve the perimeter, the systems, and educate people through the assessment and what you've done. And then we have our SIG. So now let's talk, that was red teaming in general. So what are we doing within the SIG? Well, we're providing this forum for people who are involved in red teaming and to discuss what's the latest technique, process, methodologies that we could use and share that information together. We've got 80 members. We've had 80 members for a while. So it hasn't grown, and I'll get to that when we talk about recent activities. And we also have this little wiki that we use for sharing with members. Also, they're very quiet, unfortunately, because of, well, we haven't had many activities in recent time. Our goal is still the same. Our goals are the same. Create this debate. It's a little bit like every area of cybersecurity, people are passionate and have strong ideas. So we want to get all those on the table and sort of reach some consensus on things like definition, terminologies, process, procedures across the world. We want to share our experiences and our knowledge. We want to do discuss maybe some specific details of things we've done that worked. And I'll get into the different tracks we use for that. And then we want to exchange also about the legal basis that may be applicable in different jurisdictions and the tips and tricks that people have found to authorize more and more of these kinds of activities without getting into trouble. And if you have seen the news, you would have seen some of these things happening, but you could have seen some of these things being well authorized, or so they thought, still landing some people in jail as they do it. So this is the kind of experience we really need to learn about if we want to, you know, not end up in the same situation. And generally assist all our members to build up their capability. So we decided to organize the SIG in 2 tracks. One is the outreach track, which is open to anybody who's interested in red teaming and wants to join. But the point there is we're generic about, you know, this is a capability as a process, if you want, that an organization would stand up and use to improve their security. So anyone can join that track. And then we have the exchange track, which is what we call the closed track. And this is for people who are currently operating red teams and want to share the experience that they've got doing real assessments on their companies and talk about the tools, the techniques, and the procedures. And then the idea is really you have to be a member of a red team, and you have to be willing to share information. So, you know, the idea of the exchange track is that it starts first with the new members providing a presentation on the red team activity they've done. And then after that, they're part of the exchange track, and they'll see all the other ones share information. So you have to have done some red teaming to join there. And again, you get a lot just from, you should get a lot from the outreach track. Really, the exchange track is sensitive. People talk about what they did to their companies, their organizations, and that makes them feel not so willing to share it if they don't know who's there and if they're not getting this quid pro quo. So this was the design we made, for better or for worse, and this is the approach we've taken so far. And so far, well, it's been very quiet, so let's get to that. For those of you who were at the June update last year, I'm very ashamed to say that there's been no change in the bullets, quite unfortunately. Jordi and I have been very busy with things that were not foreseen. We've not been so active with the SIG, that's for sure. And then we've had this pandemic, and as I told you, our SIG is very much in-person oriented. At least, so for example, the exchange track, we didn't want to do any exchange meeting that are not in person. So that didn't help either. And the membership has been quiet. So we hope to change this. So we've planned a few things. We wanted to get something earlier in the year, but again, both of us were too busy, and none of the members also offered anything. So here we are, and I think that the next opportunity for us to do something will be in the fall. And the idea that I'm trying to put together myself with Jordi, providing some help, is to get on a cyber range and provide some mini trainings on some tools. And the idea would be that our members would actually prepare this training. We would support them with the cyber range and the virtual machines that are necessary. And then they would come in and do the red team training. How do you do this kind of attack, for example, using this tool? And we'd build a scenario around all of this. So this is what we want to do. And after that, I think we need to resume our initial, topics of interest, which, got us going in the first place. Again, further trainings on different tools, techniques, and procedures, doing some collaboration in cyber exercise, because the assessment of the security of a company from a red team is extremely sensitive, and this is not something you necessarily collaborate on. But to get good at it and grow your skills and your knowledge, you don't have a lot of opportunities to practice. So there is a thought that we could actually use some of these resources in cyber exercise for them to practice in a safe environment where, in the context of cyber exercises, you're willing to take some risks, because it's just an exercise. If something goes wrong, it's not too bad. So this is another activity that we'll try to stand up soon. And finally, there's a lot of things that you need to do when you're doing this kind of operation. You need to protect the attacks, the information you get from these attacks, but you also need to plan and support your attacks correctly. And there's a lot of tooling that would be supporting the attack procedures, capturing your objectives, capturing the things you've done as well. Because of course, if you go in a production network and something happens, and then company finds that, well, the company knows, but I mean the sort of the sysadmins and the blue teams, if you want, the CERT teams, find out it was you, they tend to actually blame you for a whole lot more of the things that are going wrong, in the network than the things you did. So you need to do a lot of tracing of what you did in order to explain, no, this wasn't me, you can't blame me for that. And sometimes these questions come months later. And if you don't remember what you did or how you did it or why you did something, then you're really in trouble trying to explain that. And it damages the operation, if you want. Company loses confidence that this is the right approach. So you actually need a lot of supporting tools to capture what you're doing and keep that as a proper record, all very sensitive information. So again, we want to track on how to properly sort of operate a red team and what kind of tools do you need to support that. And for any other activities, of course, for us, any proposals by other SIG members are really, really welcome. So it's been quiet, partly our fault as co-chairs. We've been too busy, but still, we've never denied anyone any idea. So we're hoping that when we kickstart the next virtual meeting in the fall, then others will come in and add more activities to our SIG. So that's all the slides that I have. So I guess at this point we would go to the Q&A session.
Excellent, Luc. Thank you. Don't beat yourself up too much. Like you said, you all are a SIG that tends to do most of your work in person, which is quite understandable. And we've all gotten a little zoomed out and WebExed out and Teamsed out and all that, and not always the best place to have those discussions. Obviously. One question I have is, you mentioned that you've got the open and closed areas of the SIG. What kind of groups do you encourage to join each of those? What are you looking for in membership for those different roles?
So really on the outreach, we would like to get people who don't have red teaming capabilities, but think it's a good idea and need the information to sell the buy to their management, to think companies, this is something they need to invest. This is really what we want. If you haven't done this, it's hard to think, how useful it is. And but once you've done it, you really realize, okay, this is much better than anything else. It's expensive in the sense that it's a lot of expertise and it's a slow process as well. So not everybody can afford it. But if you're scared about the legal implications, the activities on production networks, you get turned off pretty quickly before you actually understand the true benefit. And we've all done it on pretty significant production networks, some of us anyways, and you can control the risks in the end.
Absolutely. I think that is a brilliant point, is that a lot of companies, especially some that are new to or trying to mature their processes, and with everything that's in the news right now, everybody's getting a little nervous about their systems and how do I protect myself and how do I find the problems before somebody externally does. I know for some of the organizations I've worked for, it's that almost if I don't look for it, it's not there.
Yeah.
And trying
Yeah, and this is a real challenge for a red team because actually, if you've been a senior person or a politician, ignorance is truly bliss. And, they don't really want to know. But the problem is that at the end of the day, if you do get an attack, and so many organizations are getting more of it, and so much attention is coming to it, you're actually going to survive only if you react well.
Mhm.
We don't get blamed anymore for flaws in protection. We get blamed more for how it was handled after it happened. And this is what the red team is going to teach you. Don't forget the difference between a penetration testing and the red team, which goes all the way into the incident handling process. So we've had when we did this, well, at large scale, there were what we call trusted agents that we would put up the chain of command that knew about the operation. And as the incident gets detected and people start to do the incident handling, it reaches a higher level of management. And then you get the call that it says, was it you or was it not you? And you would then have like a charter that would say, I'm not telling you anything, just handle it as real. And then it goes to the next level. And then people get woken up at night, if you want, saying, we have a problem. The ability to exercise, if you can handle the incident well, is of extreme importance. And you can do that in exercises, but everything is not real. And everything is set up for the exercise, everything goes well, and we want a happy ending. So, oh yeah, we can manage this, pat on the back, exactly. When you're doing it with the red team, you're gonna find out what really doesn't work. And that is really valuable.
I think you can't emphasize that enough, that the time to be learning how to do this is not the time you're having your first big incident, which I think a lot of companies over the last 6 to 7 months have probably faced that, where they're like, oh my goodness, industry-wide event, and it's our sales guys have the front door. That's the only way to get in. You have no other contact. So I'm very excited at the work you're doing. Can't wait to hear more about what your next update and what all you're all able to do. But you are planning a virtual event potentially this fall.
There's a question mark. We want to do it. We haven't planned it yet. Jody and I have discussed the shape it would have, but we haven't engaged a SIG yet on it.
Okay.
But hopefully in the next few weeks we will do that.
Excellent. Well, let us know what you need, please.
For sure. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, Luc, thank you so much for your time today, and for all of our presenters. It's always exciting to hear what the SIGs are up to, and I appreciate your time today. For those of you who have watched, if you have follow-up questions, please go out to first.org and look on the left-hand nav bar, and you can see how to contact each of these SIGs. One other thing to note is that we do have, I apologize, we do have a question. Hang on just a moment.
I was gonna point it out.
Excellent. No. So the question is, can you elaborate on your last slide where you mentioned the cyber exercise? What do you have in mind?
So I have in mind the two things is actually organizing a cyber exercise dedicated to the SIG. And actually we should expand. So dedicate to anyone who want to participate in the exercise. And this is something we do, and we do some pretty sophisticated ones. Basically, we set up this virtual environment that's realistic from some critical infrastructure sector. For example, we've done civil nuclear, we've done banking sector. We have fake users that are simulating activity in the network, servers with vulnerabilities, and then we have a red team that does the attack in the context of the exercise. So this is not the real red team we talk about, but still same skill sets being applied into a more benign environment, if you want. So this would be an exercise in which the red teamers can come in and practice their skills and learn, how do I do red team? How do I get organized to break into networks and do this? And they would see what it is. So this would be helpful for the SIG, and even if we put in new tools and we have CERT members that are playing the blue side to practice that part as well. So we'd have red and blue training. So that's one of the things. The other thing we're interested in, as we on our company level sell cyber exercise, we always use red teams that are live and dynamic. So for our real cyber exercise, we would love to be able to leverage the overall red team community, if they have any free time, to join our exercise and come into our red team as a full-time, not a full-time member because it's not that long, but as a member, and assist us during the exercise execution. What you get there is to work with other red teamers in a really realistic environment that is under control. and that would be more experience as well. So what we want to do, the virtual meeting is a mini training. We're going to start a scenario. Probably the next one could be a full exercise, and after that, there could be opportunities for red teamers to join real cyber exercises.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Excellent.
I hope it
Well,
answers the question.
I think so. Excellent. Luke, thank you again. I'd also just like to remind folks that our annual conference, our virtual conference, is going to be starting. We've got a Sunday night social at 2100 UTC, and then the keynotes start Monday at 12 UTC. Please go out to first.org. Registration is free. You do not have to be a member, and we will have the YouTube channel up and running. So we hope to see you there. But thank you everyone for your time today, and take care.
Good. Thank you, Sean. Bye-bye.